We've now made our way back down to the lower court, or the first floor. In many ways, this room looks like the one above, but there are some significant differences. Maybe the most obvious, the pulpits here are much higher and more elaborate. Now, part of that is that this is worship space versus the schoolroom above, but also this is Jacob Bump's style of work versus the simple, quick style of Truman Angel above. Maybe the best example of that, the beaded keystone you see in the center of the arch near the ceiling behind me, very labor intensive. That comes right out of the 1806 edition of that pattern book. Remember, Bump gets upset, Truman Angel comes in, his keystone is in back, it's flat with little holes drilled in it to form a pattern. Much simpler and quicker. While you're looking up, you might notice that the ceiling is significantly different as well. There are not the large wooden rollers on the ceiling here that we saw above. They did have, though, curtains or veils in and functioning and used regularly on this floor, but they were different in design. These were described as canvas, painted heavily white on both sides, like sails to a ship, operated like theater curtains. And they talk of ropes, pulleys, canvas, and this time the wooden roller was on the bottom of the canvas for weight. It would drop into the opening that's running east-west, as well as an opening that runs north-south. So one big worship space here becomes 4 smaller ones. They could also divide off around and between each level of the pulpits for privacy in which to study or pray. They used this system most often on Thursdays for prayer meetings. Joseph Smith Sr. most often presided over these. They would come in the morning, maybe 10 o'clock, drop the veils, assign an elder to each corner, and have 4 services going at the same time. That would allow more to participate, more testimonies, more prayers. But these services often still went from 10 in the morning to 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Dedication Day, March 27 of 1836. For that service, they squeezed somewhere between 900 to 1,000 people into this room. 900 to 1,000, according to Joseph Smith, was as many as could be comfortably situated. Children were on the laps of adults. Every seat and aisle were crowded, and their service lasted for 7 to 8 hours. Sidney Rigdon preached that day for 2.5 hours. Joseph Smith's prayer of dedication, and both men were sitting second row from the top. Joseph's prayer of dedication about a half an hour long. There were hundreds who didn't get in to the temple dedication. They were standing around outside listening through the open windows to the service that day. To allow those people to fully participate, they decided to repeat the entire service on the following Thursday. Edward Partridge, here for both, said the second dedication was even better and even longer than the first one. Their typical worship patterns here, before and after the dedication, included those Thursday prayer meetings, but they also would come to this room on Sunday mornings for hymns and prayers and sermons and testimonies. They'd break for lunch. They would come back for more hymns and prayers and sermons and testimonies. They would serve sacrament or communion. You see those tables, brown tables in front and in back, those flip up and lock into place. They would go home for dinner. Some might then come back for choir practice. You see choir lofts on all 4 corners here, and they would sing from all 4 corners at the same time. On the dedication day, the choir sang, "The Spirit of God like a fire is burning." It has since become the Kirtland anthem. There were months surrounding the temple dedication where the people are recording in their journals incredible spiritual experiences. Latter-day Saints are Christian primitivists or restorationists. And what I mean by that is that they were trying to restore what they understood of New Testament Christianity. And the best written description of what that looked like comes from the New Testament book, The Acts of the Apostles. In many ways, that book is a template for what they're trying to accomplish here. So the book of Acts describes a community as being gathered. If you joined them, you packed your family up and moved to one of the central communities. And so that's what these people do as well. If you join them, you probably moved to Kirtland or maybe one of their Missouri communities. The book of Acts describes a people passionate about the plight of the poor and trying to live all things common, so the surplus of the wealthy could lift up the poor. And so the people here are trying to live all things common. Unfortunately, the impoverished folk were quick to sign up for that program. The wealthy members, not quite as quick. The book of Acts describes Christians with temples, because Acts is so early in Christian history, the people are still Jewish. And that is why Latter-day Saints end up Christians with temples today. The book of Acts describes people passionate about proclaiming the gospel to the rest of the world. And it was from this pulpit in 1837 that Joseph commissions Heber C. Kimball to take the gospel overseas for the first time. Soon they're headed to the United Kingdom with incredible results. And because of that close connection these people felt with the book of Acts, they are often turning to Acts language to try and describe these spiritual experiences they're having. They talk about the temple being filled with the sound of a mighty rushing wind. They talk about people speaking and singing in tongues and interpretations of tongues. They talk of tongues or pillars of fire on the roof of the temple. These accounts go on and on and on. One of my favorites. Now, Joseph had counseled these people, if God gives you a manifestation, keep it to yourself. But they were overwhelmed. Within 10 days of the temple dedication, a non-member here in Kirtland writes to his sister and says, "They say the temple is lit without candles." Love it. One of the best known of all of those spiritual experiences, April 3rd of 1836. So it's 1 week following the temple dedication. March 27 was Palm Sunday. So with the Spirit of God, we are shouting Hosanna along with most of Christianity. So April 3rd is Easter Sunday. There's once again a Sunday afternoon service going on here. Once again, 1,000 people present. The curtains out here are dropped. The room is 4. They're blessing babies and confirming converts. And while that's happening, it seems, Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery retire into the pulpits to pray. They drop the curtains or veils around them. As they finish, they stand. They record a vision of the Lord on the breastwork of the pulpit before them. So I love that. Easter Sunday, a vision of the risen Lord. To try and capture and summarize this time, Joseph called it a Pentecostal season. It was a glorious time in the life of the church.